Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. The evening stillness of our small, usually serene town was deceptive. As I sat alone at the kitchen table, the clock ticking past midnight, anxiety gnawed at me. Lila, my wife, should have been home hours ago. She wasn't answering her phone, and her friends hadn't seen her either. Something felt wrong, deeply wrong. I paced back and forth, the image of Lila's smiling face haunting me. That smile had seemed less frequent these past months, her gaze often drifting to some distant point I couldn't see. Now, with every passing minute, my worry deepened into fear. At 2 a.m., unable to stand the silence of the house any longer, I grabbed my coat and headed to the police station. The night was unusually cold, the breeze biting as I pushed through the doors of the precinct. "Can I help you?" Officer Daniels, a stocky man with a gentle demeanor, was manning the front desk. "My wife, Lila, she's missing. She hasn't come home, and she isn't answering her phone. I'm worried something's happened to her," I said, my voice rough with panic. Officer Daniels's expression shifted from routine to concern. "Let's file a report, and we'll start looking for her right away. Do you have a recent photo and details of where she might have gone?" I provided everything, my hands shaking as I handed over a photo of Lila. Daniels promised they would do everything they could and urged me to go home and wait. But how could I? A week of torturous waiting followed. I barely slept. Friends and family offered comfort, but their words were hollow echoes against my fear. Then, the call came. "We need you to come down to the station, Mr. Thompson." Officer Daniels's voice was grave. When I arrived, the pall hanging over the station was palpable. Officer Daniels met me at the door, his hat held in both hands. "I'm very sorry, Mr. Thompson. We found her." He paused, searching for the right words. "It's bad news." The world tilted. "Lila." He nodded slowly. "We found her. She's dead. It appears she was meeting someone at the old mill on the outskirts of town. It looks like there was a struggle." A struggle. My mind raced, my heart fractured with each beat. Was she? She was pregnant, Mr. Thompson. The room spun. Pregnant. The betrayal sliced through the fog of my grief, sharp and unyielding. A tear escaped, tracing a hot path down my cheek. "And there's more. We have a suspect. Someone you know." "Who?" My voice was a whisper, dread coiling in my stomach. "Tom Mercer. Your friend." "Tom. My best friend." "How? Why?" The pieces fell into place in the most horrific of ways. The late nights, the missed calls, the distance between Lila and me, it all led here. "I need to see him," I said, my resolve hardening. Officer Daniels placed a hand on my shoulder. "I understand your anger, but it's best if we handle this." "No," I shook my head, stepping back. "I need to understand. I need to know why." Understanding the gravity in my voice, Daniels nodded reluctantly. "I'll arrange for you to talk to him, but it has to be here, and it has to be controlled." I agreed, desperation to face the man who had betrayed me overriding everything else. As I sat waiting for Tom to be brought in, a plan began to form in my mind. Whatever the cost, I would find justice for Lila, for the child that might have been mine, and for the life we should have had. This was just the beginning. The fluorescent lights of the interrogation room flickered as I sat across from Tom, handcuffs glinting off his wrists. He looked different, haggard, his eyes darting around the room nervously. The door closed with a decisive click, and we were alone, save for the quiet buzz of the observation camera. "Tom," I started, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside. "Why?" He flinched, avoiding my gaze. "Jake, I can explain." Explain. My fist slammed down on the metal table, making him jump. Lila is dead, and you were the last person to see her alive. And she was pregnant, Tom. Were you the father? Tom's face crumbled, guilt written in every line. I loved her, Jake. It wasn't supposed to end like this. Loved? I scoffed, the word tasting bitter. You call this love? We were going to start over. Run away together, he whispered, tears welling up. I recoiled as if struck. The betrayal stung anew, every detail a dagger. And leave me to what? Pick up the pieces. Before Tom could respond, the door swung open and Officer Daniels entered, followed by Detective Marlene Harper, a seasoned officer known for her sharp instincts and no-nonsense approach. Enough, Harper interjected firmly. Mr. Thompson, please, step outside. We need to handle this properly. Reluctantly, I stood, my eyes locked on Tom's defeated form. I needed answers, but the law had its process. Outside, Harper approached me. We're going to get to the bottom of this, Jake. I promise you. I nodded, but my mind was racing. What happens now? We've got a lead, Harper revealed. There was a witness near the old mill. Saw a third person lurking around the time Lila was killed. A third person? I echoed, hope mingling with my confusion. Yes, and we're bringing them in now. Maybe they saw something that can clear this up. Harper's tone was cautiously optimistic. Moments later, a young woman was escorted into a nearby room. She was petite, with nervous eyes that seemed too big for her face. Harper and I observed from behind the one-way glass as another officer began the questioning. Miss, can you state your name for the record? The officer asked. Sarah Jennings, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. And what were you doing near the old mill on the night of July 5th? I was meeting someone, Sarah hesitated, then added, I saw them, the woman and a man arguing. Then another man came out of the shadows. Did you see his face? Harper pressed, her interest piqued. No, it was too dark. But he was tall, bigger than the first man. The puzzle was slowly coming together, each piece more unsettling than the last. Who was this mysterious figure? Was he the real killer? As Sarah continued to describe the scene, my resolve hardened. Whoever was responsible for Lila's death would pay, and I would ensure justice was served, no matter how deep I had to dig into the sordid tangle of lies and betrayal that had shattered my life. Leaving the station, the weight of the unsolved questions pressed heavily on me. Lila's secrets, Tom's betrayal, and now a mysterious third person. I was in the eye of a storm, and the only way out was through. The wind howled outside as I paced the length of my living room, every creak of the old house a reminder of the silence Lila had left behind. The information from Sarah Jennings about a third person at the scene nagged at me relentlessly. Who was he? And more critically, what was his role in Lila's death? My phone buzzed, shattering the silence. It was Detective Harper. Jake, we've got a lead on the man Sarah described. Traffic cams near the mill caught a partial plate that matches a rental registered to a John Doe, fake ID. But there's a local address linked to the rental agreement. We're heading there now. I thought you should know. A lead. Finally, something tangible. I'm coming with you, I said, grabbing my keys. That's not a good idea, Jake. I'm already on my way, I cut in, determination stealing my voice. I couldn't just sit and wait, not anymore. The address led us to a rundown motel on the outskirts of town. The neon sign flickered ominously as Harper and I approached the manager's office. The manager, a greasy-haired man with suspicious eyes, reluctantly handed over the key to room 109 after Harper flashed her badge. We walked to the room, the crunch of gravel under our feet sounding like thunder in the tense silence. Harper knocked sharply. "Police. Open up." No answer. She nodded at me, then kicked the door in. The room was dim, the only light coming from a flickering lamp. And there, sitting on the edge of the bed, was a man, broad-shouldered and imposing, just as Sarah had described. John Doe. Harper's voice was stern as she stepped inside, her hand resting on her holster. The man raised his hands slowly, a sardonic smile playing on his lips. "No need for theatrics, detective. I was expecting you. Why were you at the mill?" I demanded, my voice harsh with barely contained rage. He looked at me, his eyes cold and calculating. "You must be the husband." "I was there for Lila, yes." "She owed me." "Owed you? Owed you for what?" My fists clenched at my sides. "Money," he said simply. "Lila had debts. Gambling. She was desperate, tried to play all sides, her lover, you, me." I recoiled, the pieces falling into place. Lila's late nights, the whispered phone calls. How had I been so blind? "And you killed her?" Harper interjected, her tone sharp. He shook his head. "No. I came to collect, but someone got there before me. I saw it all. It was him," he pointed at a picture on the wall, one from a surveillance camera outside the mill. The image was grainy, but the figure was undeniably Tom. My heart pounded in my chest. Tom, again. Always Tom. "Why didn't you call the police?" Harper questioned. He laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "And get involved?" "No, thank you. I prefer to keep my business private." Harper arrested him for withholding information and we left the motel, the echo of his mocking laughter following us out. As we drove back, the pieces of the puzzle lay scattered in my mind, each one a sharp stab of betrayal. Lila's secrets, her debts, her fear. Tom's betrayal. And now, a mysterious figure with his own agenda. The web of deceit was complex, but I was determined to unravel it, to find justice for Lila, and maybe in doing so, find some semblance of peace for myself. "Where to now?" Harper asked, her voice pulling me from my thoughts. "To see Tom. He has more to answer for," I said resolutely, staring into the dark road ahead, where secrets lay waiting to be unearthed. The interrogation room was cold, the stark white light casting long shadows that seemed to echo the dark revelations of the past weeks. Tom sat across from me again, his appearance even more worn than the last time. The truth was close, palpable in the tense air between us as Detective Harper prepared her questions. "Tom, we know about the money. We know about the arguments. Now tell us, did you kill Lila?" Harper's voice was steady, her eyes locked on his. Tom's face was a mask of resignation as he met my gaze, his voice barely a whisper. "I didn't kill her, Jake. I swear it." "But you were there," I pressed, the weight of betrayal heavy in my voice. "Why? If not to kill her, then why?" "I was trying to end it," Tom confessed, his voice cracking. "The affair, the lies, it was all too much. I went to tell her it was over, to confront her about the gambling, the debts she dragged me into." I flinched, each word slicing through the last strands of our friendship. "And then what?" "We argued. She told me she was pregnant. I didn't know what to do. But before I could even process it, someone else was there." "Who?" Harper leaned in, her pen poised. "A man, from the shadows. He hit me from behind. When I came to, Lila was," Tom couldn't finish, his body shaking with sobs. Harper and I exchanged a glance. This matched the new suspect's confession, the man from the motel. "We found him," Tom. He saw you there, but he claims he didn't kill her either. Then who did? My question hung in the air, desperate for the grim answer. It was, Tom hesitated, swallowing hard, it was her dealer. He came to collect that night. He saw us arguing, saw a chance to scare her into paying. It went too far. The room spun. Lila's secrets, deeper and darker than I had ever imagined, had led to her demise. Not just a love triangle, but a tangled web of debts, threats, and desperation. Harper stood abruptly. We'll verify this with the dealer. If what you're saying checks out, then it's a matter of clearing some details. As Harper left to coordinate with her team, I sat frozen, staring at Tom. The friend I thought I knew was a stranger before me, tied into my life's greatest tragedy. Jake, I'm so sorry, Tom's voice was barely audible. Sorry. I echoed, my tone hollow. Your sorry won't bring her back. It won't undo the betrayal. I know, he whispered, tears streaming down his face. I never meant for any of this to happen. I stood up, my chair scraping harshly against the floor. But it did, Tom. And that changes everything. Leaving the room, I felt the final threads of our friendship sever, irrevocably broken by lies and deceit. In the days that followed, the dealer was arrested, confirming Tom's story. Lila had been caught in a deadly intersection of her own making, her secrets spilling out too late to save her or us. As I sat in our empty home, the silence was a stark contrast to the chaos of the past weeks. The truth had been revealed, but it offered no comfort, only the cold realization of how little I had really known my wife, and how deeply betrayal could cut. In the end, the house sold quickly. I packed up what remained of my life, the memories too painful to linger on. As I drove away, I glanced back once at the life I was leaving behind, forever altered, forever tainted by the shadows of deceit. No looking back now, only forward, into a future I had to rebuild from the ashes of the past.